We are in a moment where, frankly, there are so many folks who have seen uh, what felt like hope being snatched away, what felt like opportunities being snatched away. And again, this is not to say that had VP Harris won, that everything was going to be rosy. We know it was still going to be some BS. It's empire. We knew that. But I want to go back to something that you said about not getting to people where they matter the most. And I know I already hear the audience. They're going to say, well, black men voted at the second highest rate as the black women. Yes, that is true. But we were at a reparations hearing. I'm one of the reparations commissioners in the state of New York, and we held a hearing not too long ago. And there was a brother who stood up and said, listen, speaking out of frustration and hurt, right? And so we gotta locate where his comments were coming from, and he was very assertive with what he said. And this is one of the reasons why when you were a commissioner, you can't take things personally, because even though they're said to you, your job is to hold space for people to speak what it is that's driving them. And one of the things he said was, y'all can blame everybody else for not going to the polls. I didn't vote for anybody. I stayed home. I know a lot
Hmm.
of people who stayed home because nobody
Hmm.
was talking to me. And,
Hmm.
part of me is like, well, they try to do this, that. But the reality is, if that's what the people feel, that's what the people feel. Now, you and I, you got a poli sci background. We're keyed in. We're intentional
Hmm.
about seeking out information. If I'm struggling, I don't have time to be having political discourse where we're engaging in the back and forth. I ain't got time for all that. I'm trying to keep my lights on. I'm trying to make sure my baby got somebody to pick them up from school. I'm trying to make sure that the home that baby's going to come home to is going to be safe. It's not going to have dangers even within the household. And there were so many missed opportunities, I think, to really speak to the heart of people who were navigating that very real reality, who are not perhaps listening to SiriusXM channel 126, who are not perhaps have the background of cable news or mainstream news going all day long. And it feels like while there were some missed opportunities, one of the things that has been sort of just in the back of my head ever since the election was this idea that this new reality is going to force us, and by us I mean us, right? It's going to force us to have to rely on each other in ways that perhaps had she won, we might not have. We might have continued to be okay with disparities and with the fact that it's a slow march towards progress. But now that these people them have voted in a way that says we don't want no progress with y'all, we ain't trying to do this with y'all, like figure it out. It really is going to create, I think, an opportunity for us to go inward and to have to figure out some things that have kept us apart. To have to figure out some things. A lot of us have chosen to take our gift, skills, and talents elsewhere outside of the community, and they're going to quickly, I think, find that in this new reality, the only way out of this mess is through us, and through us collaborating and being able to figure out what it was that made it attractive to leave. What was it that made other people's ice look like it was colder? And we're going to have a lot of healing forced upon us that we might have avoided had we gone another way. So I'm trying to find the most optimistic way of thinking about this new era that we're in. But the reality is, there should not have been so much disconnect between those of us who are paying attention and those who are struggling. And in fact, a lot of us who are paying attention are also struggling, but there should not have been a reality that allowed so many of us to be comfortable with the disconnects in our community, such that living with the persistent disparities was acceptable. Am I making sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And but the fact of the matter, first let's touch on those people who didn't go,
Hmm.
that didn't vote. Um, it used to be, especially in the South, most Southerners were Republicans until they were Democrats.
Yeah.
Um, and the Kennedys, most people started voting for the Kennedys. Before that was Roosevelt, then it was the Kennedys, then it was Jimmy Carter, then it was Bill Clinton,
Hmm.
right? And then after Bill Clinton, that was Barack,
Yeah.
right? But you got to remember, as people of color continue to struggle, as wages, as food inflation grew, when wages went down, disproportional communities, which are mainly people of color, those are the ones who are never heard,
Hmm.
unseen.
Mm-hmm. Ignored.
ignored. And one of my guy I love is Bishop Reverend William Barber,
Yes. Love him.
a North Carolina Central grad, but a man of the cloth, but
Mm.
nevertheless a man who speaks the truth.
That's right.
And not only he speaks the truth from a biblical standpoint, but from a personal standpoint.
Yes.
When poverty is embellished into a community for hundreds of years,
Mm. As the norm.
as a norm,
Yes.
doormats, placeholders, why would you think they're going to the polls for you?
Mm.
You didn't talk about giving them any increase in their wages.
Mm.
You talked about price gouging. They don't, a lot of them don't even hold a high school or GED.
Come on.
So what do they know about price gouging?
Mm.
They know they're working at Taco Bell or Kentucky Fried Chicken or that chicken factory or that plastic factory, and they're making X amount of dollars, but
Right.
it ain't equating to their basic needs:
Mm.
food, gas, rent.
Mm.
We can't speak about giving someone $25,000 for a house when they ain't even got a job that pay them $30,000 a year.
Ooh. Damn.
So how do we, and let's talk about New York.
Whew.
That's your home. That's where you from. Let's talk about why Black men in the Bronx and Brooklyn, Queens didn't go to the polls.
Mm.
They don't trust leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leadership ain't met them. George Floyd, the gentleman who got killed with the Lucy cigarette, they look at what's happening on the subways, the trains, and
Mm.
everything else that's what's happening in New
Come
York
on.
City. And they're saying, they ain't protecting me
Or even talking to me.
or talking to me.
They don't even see me except as a
So
nuisance.
I'm educated, you educated, yeah. But now the lower middle class, impoverished, they don't care about what me and you thinking about.
Mm. Well, especially when me and you ain't forming our thoughts in a ways that matter to their lived experience. I would tell my team, because when I'm not on these airways, I run a law center, and one of the things I tell the team is that we can't go into NYCHA. That those are our projects in New York City,
Mhm.
NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority. We can't go into NYCHA talking about come to the polls, and people like, but I got mold and rats. Like
Mhm.
there's, I've had a
Right.
leaky roof that in government funded housing. I've had, and so the people you want me to vote for ain't did nothing for my lived experience and my lived condition. And I was like, we have to, as every effective community organizer has realized, you got to have the ability to speak to people's needs if you want to get them to think about your electoral desires. And one of the things William Barber always talks about is the fact that you're talking about the working class. Nobody's talking about the poor. Like you're talking
Amen.
about people who are middle income. Nobody's talking about the fact, when I was on the New York City Racial Justice Commission, one of the things that we fought for was a true measure of the cost of living. And we needed that because in the city of New York, according to the measure of cost of living that we currently have to use, which is set by the federal government, a family of four making $29,500 a year. Let's call it 30. Let's be generous. $35,000 a year is not
Mhm.
considered poor in a city like New York, according to the federal cost of living. So that means if you got a family of four in this city and you make $35,001, you're missing out on all of the social services for people who are considered poor. And what that means is when we do an actual measurement of what it costs to live here, a family of four needs at least 90 some odd $1,000 to have their basic needs met. And that's not being like, that's not vacations. That's not luxury apartments. That's just basic needs. And when we're not speaking to that, one of the things you just answered a question that's sort of been, I haven't been able to formulate anything, an answer for this, but you just did when you said, how are you talking about giving you $25,000 for a house when I don't even make $30,000 a year? year. That $25,000 for a house, yeah, it's a program to help people do better financially, but you have to already be doing well financially for that program to even begin to interest you and
And,
where it is that you'd be going.
and Lord, let's go back to this. We talk about poverty. We no longer have leeway.
Damn.
Think
Mm,
about the families right now who are suffering for Christmas with kids
mm,
that it used to be where stores had leeway.
yeah. Yep. Oh, wait, we might have to explain what layaway is, Terrence.
Well, we gonna
I just,
have to
wait,
because
there's a whole generation of people that ain't never had it.
because there's a generation that's where, especially in the South and impoverished neighborhoods, stores
Mm,
like Walmart and other stores offered department discount stores offered a program called layaway that would give you 90 days
yep.
to pay for something. It was
120
basically
at Kmart. Ask me how I know.
120 days. It was basically like a line of credit for 120 days.
Right. And
And
y'all listening, you would give the people them the stuff that you had selected. They will hold it for you, and you would come every couple of weeks. You would come, you would put some money on the balance and pay the balance down slowly. So if
in
you knew Christmas is in December, you could start putting your stuff on layaway with the school sales that would be taking place in
in
August and September.
August. Yeah. And
Mm,
that's what it was. The reality of the fact is that, and I know we're on, this is flower to the people,
we'll
but
get back to that. This is good.
part of flower to the people is understanding what social equity and justice is all about.
Yes.
The reality of the fact of the matter is that in communities across this urban places across this country, Philly, Detroit, Milwaukee,
Mm,
Pittsburgh, Black people said, F you.
mm,
10 million men, 10 million Black people didn't come to the polls
right.
that came 4 years earlier during COVID.
Mm,
They said, forget about you. You're not talking to me. I'm not middle class. And even if I am, you're still not meeting my needs and my expectations. So why should I vote?